Hi everyone, my name's Brittany and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in for this tutorial, which is the Chandler Sewalong. The Chandler is by far my most popular pattern. It is a flat front style pant with an elastic back, so they are the ultimate secret pajamas. The Chandler also comes in two different views, so a darted front and a pleated front. And it has a tapered leg, which also features an optional cuff if you want. I've also got a shorts view for this pattern, which is honestly perfect for the warm summer months. Today, I'm actually going to be making a pair of pleated front Chandlers for this sew along in a lilac linen, which I absolutely love. I was really lucky in that I found this linen at the thrift store for like less than $5. I absolutely love it and I'm really into the pastels right now, so I thought it would make a perfect summer pair. Before we get started, I just want to note that today's sew along is a little bit lengthier than some of my other sew alongs, and that's just because I wanted to capture all the tricky little bits that might stump anyone trying to sew these pants. It is a very beginner friendly pattern, but there are sometimes like little bits that are a little bit harder to explain through instructions and easier to show in video format. But these pants honestly come together super quickly. I think I got one of this floral pair done in just a few hours. I was actually quite surprised at how quickly they came together and I'm really loving them. So let's dive right in. Dive! Hey, are you gonna help me sew today? Gonna help me sew some pants? Let's do it. So I've got everything set out. All my pattern pieces are cut. I've got my interfacing, scissors, thread. Basically everything I can think of for this project is here. The first thing to start with is interfacing our pattern pieces. I'm using sew-in interfaces because, as y'all know, it's my favorite. I've got a link here if you want to learn how I turn my scraps into interfacing, as I'm not going over that in this tutorial. Ooh, need a coffee refill. Now I am totally ready to tackle this project. Once your two pants pieces have been interfaced along the pocket edges and the front waistband facing has been interfaced, it's time to stay stitch the edges of these two pieces along with the matching front pocket pieces. So stay stitching along this edge here, and repeating it with the opposite side pattern pieces. And this is what it should look like. I opted to use a different colored thread when stay stitching my pattern pieces so that it would be easier to see in this video. Next, we are going to work on the pleats or darts, depending on which view you're doing. So you should already have some notches. And if you haven't already, mark where your either dart ends or where your pleats are supposed to end. I'm just going to use some tailor's chalk for this. So with this pleated version, what we're going to do is pleat towards the pocket. So just lift your pleat up and fold it over just like that, matching up your notches and end points. And then pin along this folded edge. Once you're done, you're going to repeat with this one and the opposite pant pleats as well. Once you have all your pleats pinned, you're going to sew an edge stitch right along here. I'm adjusting my machine so that my needle is closer to the pleated edge. Once you finish sewing your pleats, give them a nice press. And this is what they should look like. Amazing, right? Next up, it's time to attach our pockets. Start by pinning and sewing the front pocket bags to the front pant legs along the angled edge. Once sewn, grade your seams to reduce bulk. Then head over to your iron and press your pocket seams towards the inner pocket bag. Finally, understitch your pocket bag edge. This not only adds strength to the seam, but it also keeps it from stretching out over time and prevents the pocket bag from creeping out when being worn. And this is what your understitched pocket should look like. Now it's time to sew the back pocket to the front along the curved edge. With right sides together, pin your 2 pocket pieces in place. Repeat this with the other side of your trousers. We are going to sew all the way around this edge and then finish our seams. And now to finish those seams, I'm opting for a zigzag stitch this time around. And there you have it, a beautiful zigzag stitch. I quite like how rough and ready it looks. It reminds me of vintage pieces I've found in stores before. Now we need to press this pocket and baste it into place. So we're going to start by flipping the entire pocket to the wrong side, like this. And we're just going to press this edge. Then we're going to match up our notches and pin along the top edge. Then repeating with the side seams and basting them. Okay, now it's time to put our 2 front pieces together. With right sides together, line up the crotch seams of your 2 front pants pieces and pin along this curve, matching up your notches. Then we need to draw a line from the notch up here all the way down to where our seam allowance at the crotch curve begins. This is the part we will be sewing.
I did wind up redrawing my line just because it was really challenging trying to draw it without getting my head in the frame. So this outer line is the new line that I'll be following, going all the way down.
Yay! We now have our entire front pant sewn. Now what we need to do is press this faux fly to the left-hand side. And you might be catching a bit of the edge of your pocket, and that's totally fine. We are just going to pin this into place. All right, now that it's pinned, we're going to flip it over and grab our faux fly guide. Line up the guide with the center front edge. And you may need to shift this around depending on where your pins are. We're just going to trace along this edge with a marking utensil. So now we have our guideline, and we're going to sew 2 lines of stitches right next to each other using this as our guide, as well as along the crotch seam from the waist through to the end of the crotch. Finish it up by giving it a lovely press. And we're going to finish the bottom edge of the waistband. I love adding bias tape to this little bit. I just really enjoy having a little fun pop of a surprise in my garment that only I know about. I made this bias binding from leftover scraps, and I'm just going to attach it to the bottom edge of my waistband facing. Now it's time to attach our waistband facing to the top edge of our front trousers. And we're going to sew right across the top. Then grade your seams, as this part can get quite bulky. Then press your facing up. And then understitch your edge. Once you've understitched your edge, press your entire facing to the wrong side of your pants. And there you have it. Your front pants are done, so let's move on to the back. With right sides together and matching your notches, pin along the back crotch curve. Then sew the entire crotch seam together. And then you're going to want to also finish the edge of this entire seam. Next, open up your back pant so that the right side is facing you. Top stitch along this entire crotch seam, just as you did with the front pants pieces. I just love a double line of top stitching. Go ahead and give this a quick press. Next, press the bottom edge of your back waistband, the edge without any notches, up a ½ inch or 1.3 centimeters. With right sides together, place your back waistband facing along the top edge of your back waist and pin into place before sewing. Grade your seams if they feel bulky. Press your waistband facing up and over the seam allowance edge, then understitch the seam. Alright, so once you've understitched your edge, place your pants with the wrong side facing you on the ironing board. We're going to fold this entire waistband facing over and press, then pin it into place. And now we are just going to sew all across the edge to create a little pocket for our elastic. Make sure your needle is as close to the edge as possible, and then start sewing. Look at how beautiful that looks. Grab your elastic and thread a safety pin through one end like so. We're going to thread this elastic through our waistband, through this little opening that we made. Once threaded, I'm going to pin it on one side so it doesn't twist and then straighten this out. Right now, we don't really want too many wrinkles. But next we need to baste one side of the waistband closed, leaving the other open. It will look something like this. Now it's time to bring our front pants back into action and attach our back pant. I'm just going to pin all along the crotch seams. So you want to make sure that your crotch seams are going in opposite directions to reduce bulk. You may notice that your stitching is also going in opposite directions at this point, and that's okay. The pattern was designed this way as no one should be looking up under you at your pant seams. So I'm just going to pin these two together right here and then continue through both pant legs until I reach the ankles on either side. Then it's time to sew from one ankle all the way through to the other ankle. Feel free to reinforce your seams at the crotch point if you find that those seams tend to wear down quickly over time. I know mine always seem to pop on any of my pants, so I always reinforce this seam. Next, it's time to attach the side seams of our pants together. To do this, match the top edge of your back waistband with this bottom edge of your front waist facing, and then pin through till you reach the ankle edge. Repeat on the other side of your pants. When you reach the back waistband for this side, stop. The reason that we aren't pinning this side of the elastic waistband is because this is where we will need to be able to pull our elastic to achieve the correct fit. So for right now on this side, sew from this point all the way down to the hem. And then on the opposite side, you can sew from here all the way down to the hem. Once you have both of your legs sewn up and the edges finished, it's time to try on your pants. How exciting! As you can see, these are quite loose on me, which is fine, as this allows me to get in and out of my pants right now. But what we basically want to do is pull your elastic until the waist fits pretty snug in place. Pin your elastic into place and test out how it feels. Check to make sure that you can lift, maybe kick, do some squats, I don't know. You just want to make sure you feel comfortable moving around in them. And the most important thing is that you want to be able to wiggle past your hips. And right now mine is a bit too tight. So I'm going to loosen my elastic a bit because my hip to waist ratio is a little bit large. So if you find that you can't get the elastic in the right spot that you want, you may want to add a side zip or a front zip to your future makes, both of which I have tutorials to on my blog, and I'll link those in the description box below. But for now, err on the side of having your elastic being a bit loose and opt for wearing a belt for this first pair if you can't get the elastic as tight as you would like. Once your elastic is where you want it to be, what you want to do is pin it in place. So just try to get all that excess fabric out the way. And then sew this part into place. And then trim off all that excess elastic. Now it's time for my favorite part, which is finishing up those waistband seams. What you want to do is to actually fold your front waistband facing over the back waistband, pin it, and then sew down this piece. This encloses the entire edge of both waistband facings, leaving you with a beautiful finish. Now we are going to trim our corners, and my favorite part, which I find to be totally magical, is to flip this to the right side like so. And then, whoa, look at how great that looks on both the outside and the inside. Okay, so this next part is optional, which is stitching your back elastic down with 2 rows of stitching. I always opt to do this as I personally love the look and it helps to keep the back gathers evenly dispersed for these pants. To sew your elastic into place, you'll want to put it under your machine and really stretch your elastic as it gets sewn. I like to pin the halfway point of the back waist and the elastic, that way I can stretch and sew it in sections, if that makes sense. I'm sewing my 2 lines at 1/2 inch and 1 inch from the top waist edge. Next up are the optional belt loops. Go ahead and finish one of the long edges. Once finished, head to your iron and press the unfinished edge up by 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeters. Then press the finished edge over top the unfinished edge by 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. Once pressed, we are going to sew 2 lines of top stitching along the outer edge of both the long sides of the belt loop. Now it's time to cut out all our belt loops. Cut your belt loop into 3.5 inch or 8.9 centimeter long pieces. You should have approximately 5 belt loops in total. With your belt loops all ready, it's time to pin them into place. Fold 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeters of each end of the belt loop to the wrong side. Pin the upper and lower belt loop edges along your pant waist. I like to place my belt loops in the following places: 1 at the center back, 1 at either side seam, and 1 in between my pleats. Now that they are all pinned into place, I'm just going to sew a row of straight stitches at the top and bottom edge of the belt loops. Also, I'm just going to go ahead and pin this. I'm going to sew here a little bit and here to keep my facing from peeking out the top of my pants. And your belt loops are complete. Time to finish up our pants with our hem. You may notice that I have some bias tape along these edges, and that's because I plan on doing the cuff version of the Chandlers. So what I made sure of was to position this bias tape within 1 inch from the bottom edge, because that's where the hem is. And I made this about 5 to 6 inches long just to give myself plenty of room when I go to do the cuff. But before we get to the cuff, we need to hem our pants. So press your hem edge back by 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeters. And then fold it back once again by 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeters, pinning your hem into place as you go. Okay, and then we're going to repeat for the other side. Then sew your hem into place along the upper pressed edge. This is what it looks like. For the cuff, you can do this at whatever size you want. I personally like to do my cuffs at around 1.5 to 2 inches. So I'm just going to fold my cuff up that length and then press it. and then again folding it up one more time so that I hide this hem edge. So I'm basically doing the exact same thing that I did with the hem. Now it's just with the cuff. This is what it should look like roundabouts. Now, you are going to have a bit of excess at your cuff, and that's totally fine. It was designed to have like a bunching effect. But what you're going to do is pin at 4 points. So I'm going to pin right along the 2 side seams, and then right at the center back area and center front area. To finish this up, simply stitch a little line of reinforcing stitches at each of your pin marks so that the cuff stays in place when it's being worn. And voila, your cuff and pants are complete. I hope that you feel super proud of yourself for making your very own pair of trousers. Thanks so much for tuning in for this sew along. Feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that little notification bell so that anytime I post a sew along like this or any other video, you're notified first. And feel free to let me know which of my patterns you'd like me to do for my next sew along in the comments below. Until next time, bye! Bye, guys. Nandame, you're so loud. Cutie patootie.